All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking to you today. It is Wednesday. It's hump day. And yeah, I'm starting late today because I believe I indicated this in a note on YouTube and that I shared on the Facebook page, the group page for Halitics, that I was lobbying with Code Pink this morning on Capitol Hill. We were actually at the Dirksen office building for the Senate, and I only went to Republican senators' offices. We were there to urge against adoption of Trump's plan to take ownership. I believe he said the U.S. would own. I think he used the word ownership or own, take over, take control of Gaza. And I'll be honest with you, I didn't think that's why I was going down there. It was originally thought the plan was to lobby in support of the peace negotiations in Ukraine with Russia, right? The plan there to end the killing in Ukraine, which I do support. And I understand, Trump said, well, Ukraine started the war, which, it's not true. It's really just not true. It was more NATO and Russia, NATO provoking Russia, and then Russia actually launching an attack. So I think you would have to say Ukraine is kind of caught in the crosshairs, right, of this great powers conflict. And it's very, very unfortunate. I'm not, saying, Zelensky's some great guy or the Ukraine is some wonderful country, but it is very, very terrible what's happened to Ukraine. I mean, they're the victims. Of course, Ukrainians are the victims more so than anybody else of this conflict between the West and Russia and Putin's Russia. So it's been a terrible, terrible 3+ years or just about 3 years now, I guess, in 22 March when the war began. It's been just a terrible, the latest hostilities really erupted. Terrible, terrible. And I wanted to, lobby in support of some kind of negotiated peace with Russia where, Ukraine keeps certainly its integrity, keeps its sovereignty. But yeah, there's going to have to be some land swap or at least a significant amount of demilitarized zone between Russia and Ukraine. And Trump's right. I mean, Russia's lost a lot of lives. They've expended a tremendous amount of treasure and blood. And, Putin's not going to just leave Ukraine. That's just not going to happen unless, you want to keep the war going for another 3, 5, 6 years. And obviously, that's to no one's interest. Well, it's to Lockheed Martin's interest. It's to Boeing's interest. And fortunately, for us at this point, Trump's foreign policy team isn't motivated by what benefits, right? They're not asking themselves, I hope they're not asking themselves what benefits Boeing, what benefits Lockheed Martin, what benefits Raytheon. That's what Biden's foreign policy team did, and the fruits of that poisonous tree have been just absolutely devastating. This is not a brief for Trump whatsoever. Trump has been terrible and doing terrible things. And we're going to get to Gaza in just a moment. I just didn't really want to go argue vociferously against the plan to take over Gaza or urge senators to vote against taking over Gaza or to tell Trump, don't take over Gaza, for two reasons. The primary reason is that there's no other plan on the table. I mean, I have a plan. I want a single state. Gaza becomes part of one country between the river and the sea, as does the West Bank, and the people who live in that area have to get along. I mean, Gaza's right juxtaposed right next to Israel. It's right on the border of Israel. Let me see if I can show you that slide I put together. You see the family there on the left as you're looking at your screen, and I've got getting rid of my stupid countdown timer. That is the worst. Why does it do that? Sorry about that, folks. Anyway, so we got rid of the countdown timer, and you can see on the right is Gaza. I'm not, in 2023, and it's right against Israel. So yes, Gaza should be part of the country of Israel. Period. And don't call it Israel, call it Palestine. I mean, call it whatever you want, but everyone there is a citizen. This is my solution, right? Trump's solution is the United States takes over Gaza. We make it a Riviera. It's beautiful. Look, it's right on the sea. We can build hotels, luxury hotels, casinos. I'll get richer and richer and richer. That's his plan. It's insanity. But the Democrats have not offered an alternative, and nobody else has either. And when Trump says, well, what are we going to do otherwise? Just let the violence continue, keep people penned up in this little area where it's terrible? Because that seems to be the only alternative that anyone in Washington can contemplate. So I wasn't really big on going there and arguing against the U.S. takeover of Gaza, not because I think it's a good idea. It's a terrible idea. It's awful. But there's nothing else on the table. The other reason I wasn't really gung-ho about going down there for this was because it's not going to happen. Both parties, there's multilateral, or certainly nationally in that area. None of the Arab countries have embraced this. Even Israel seems pretty lukewarm about it, probably because they'd prefer to take control of Gaza themselves and complete ethnic cleansing without the U.S.'s pesky involvement. And both Jordan and Egypt have said no. Saudi Arabia has said no. So it's not going to happen. So it wasn't something I really want to spend a ton of time with this. As much as I love Code Pink and think they're great and great people and good people, this isn't the issue that I'm most excited about. But I did go down. I did lobby. And, obviously the United States should not take control of Gaza. I heard some really harrowing stories. We were there also to support doctors opposed to genocide. And one of the folks that I was lobbying with was just describing how her family knows they know a Palestinian family, and one of the members of that family, 21-year-old boy, now a man, or what was a man until he was shot in the head and killed by the Israeli military, and a sniper there shot him in the head. And this happened just very recently since the ceasefire. So despite the ceasefire, Israel continues its genocide in Gaza. And obviously Trump not doing anything about it. But as bad as it is, and it's really, really bad, it's not full-scale bombing. We're not seeing dozens of dead every day the way we were up until a few days before Trump was inaugurated, the way we saw under Harris Biden for well over a year. We're not seeing dozens and sometimes hundreds killed. So I guess that's less bad. But that could change. Now, I said yesterday, I thought about this. I was listening to the Do Dissidents Bros on my drive. And they were really railing against Trump and calling, Trump basically, a genocider, and just as I've called Harris Biden, and how he's green-lighted Israel going back into Gaza and clearing it out. Or I think Trump used the phrases, here it is from NBC News, all hell is going to break out. And I was very upset to hear all that because, I've been doing everything I can on this program, at least to educate folks and educate myself more than anybody else about just how awful the treatment of the Palestinians has been, how evil it is, how immoral, how the Israel's guilty of war crimes. And so is the United States for supporting it. And that for that reason, under Harris Biden, I could not vote for Kamala Harris. And that, she was somebody that I believed her policy for Israel Gaza was just flat out evil. I wasn't going to vote for her. And I didn't see that Trump was, significantly worse. I don't know how you could be worse than being pro-genocide. That was my opinion. And I wasn't going to support, obviously wouldn't support him, but wouldn't support her either. But, then you hear the threat there. This was last week. All hell is going to break out if Hamas delays hostage releases. And Trump said something to the effect that Israel could do whatever it wanted. And also that, what the Do Dissidents Bros point out was that Trump had, shipped some of those 1-ton bombs to Israel. Apparently, not apparently, as bad as Biden was about continued supplies to Israel of weapons of death, of killing, of mass murder. There had been a pause in the shipment of those 1-ton, I guess they call them bunker busters. Although Israel was dropping those, as I understand it, on Lebanon. So I guess they had some stores, but maybe not quite as many as they would have had if Biden-Harris hadn't paused for a moment or for months even the shipment of those bombs. Trump resumed the shipment of those bombs, or at least the delivery of one order of them. And a terrible thing, right? An awful, awful, horrific thing that he did. I believe that's a war crime in and of itself. You're giving weapons that you have very, very good reason to believe will be used against civilians to murder them. So there's no defense for Trump for doing that. It's just horrific. I thought even about going back and changing yesterday's thumbnail, in which where I asked the question, "What is Trump?" and I crossed out Nazi. Talked about why I don't think he's a Nazi for a variety of reasons. Not that that's hardly an encomium or praise, but I was like, well, he really hasn't called for genocide, and I haven't heard him talking about anything like what Hitler talked about with regard to the Jews. He doesn't want war with Russia. Clearly, he doesn't want war with Russia, which was something that Hitler viewed as Germany's destiny was war with Russia. So for a variety of reasons, I didn't think it was, accurate, fair, whatever term you want to use, to call Trump a Nazi. But when I was listening to those Do Dissidents guys, and when they were talking about the 2,000-pound bomb and the tweets, all hell's going to break loose if Hamas doesn't release all of the hostages by this past Saturday, I started thinking, yeah, maybe he's a Nazi after all. Maybe I'm wrong about that. And I don't like being wrong, but I'm going to come clean, of course, if I am. And, I hope to, at least before I get my feet held to the fire, because it's more important for me to be right in the moment than to have been right when I'm proven wrong. So I debated, should I change this? There you can see that's from yesterday, have the Nazi crossed out. And ultimately, I kind of thought, I'm not going to. And the reason is because at least with Time Magazine offers what I consider to be another possible explanation for Trump's direction to Bibi, which is, yeah, go ahead, resume the pogrom in Gaza, resume it. And Netanyahu didn't. And Time says, this is part of Trump's bluster, part of Trump's negotiating, that, he's scaring Hamas so that they won't pause the release of hostages. And in fact, there had been a pause in the hostage releases, and they resumed. So I guess you could make the argument that the bluster worked in the moment because war hasn't resumed. Killing, bombing hasn't resumed. The ceasefire, although far from perfect, although Israel has been in violation of it, hasn't, evaporated. So I guess if you're going to come up with an alternative explanation, is the threats, maybe they helped prevent, possibly. I mean, that's sort of what I hope. It's hard for me to buy it, but, I just, anything just, I shouldn't say any. I mean, at some point you have to say, no, we're not going to countenance, just mass slaughter, but Israel's the killer here. So we have to fight. We have to fight to stop killing. And I would have said that if the reason for our involvement in the Middle East was to stop Israel's genocide, I would be okay with that. I would be okay with that. That doesn't appear to be on anyone's radar screen. That is trying to stop Israel militarily from killing. We'll see if those killings resume. Let's hope not. I mentioned, so Trump threatened all hell is going to break out if Palestinians don't release all the remaining hostages by Saturday. They didn't, but the plan the phase continues, phase one, and that's a positive. In fact, Hamas has offered to release all the hostages if they can get some kind of permanent ceasefire and serious negotiating for an end to the, a permanent end to this war. Israel has said no to date, as I understand it, but maybe that'll change. Maybe Trump will send Witkoff over there and really, really put the screws. You can only hope. We can only hope. To Netanyahu. By the way, 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. 240-242-5646. So this is old news, right? This is not current. This was before Trump threatened all hell would break loose. The reason he said that presumably was in response to Hamas's threat that it was going to postpone the prisoner swap for the Saturday coming up, which would have been this past Saturday, accusing Israel of continuing to shoot at Palestinians. And that was absolutely accurate. It's completely true. Israel was violating the terms of that ceasefire. Israel was shooting. Israel is shooting. Israel continues to kill Palestinians and Gazans in particular. They're a monstrous genocidal state. There's no other way to. When people try to defend this, I don't know what to say to them. So this is from Anadolu Ajansi, or when people say, well, this isn't that important, there's other things that are more important, I'm at a loss. I can't, it just seems to me that's just a way to avoid dealing with this. Well, it's not that big a deal. It's not really genocide. It's just bad. It's not really, no, this is, our country is complicit in terrible crimes against humanity. We're guilty. And I was, all set to throw, say Trump is right there as bad, worse, arguably, possibly worse even than Harris Biden. But so far, that fragile ceasefire is held. Who knows? Maybe he was trying in his strange way to keep the bombing by Israel from resuming. So I'm going to keep my fingers crossed. And you can see here what Israel was doing. Palestinian child shot dead by Israeli forces in southern Gaza Strip despite ceasefire. 13-year-old killed February 5th by Israel. And there are many others. Let's see what Al Jazeera tells us. This is from today, just how many Israel's killed. But again, the argument by Time, the justification Time ascribes to Trump, is that the threat to Hamas that all hell will break loose if you don't release the prisoners, that threat was designed to maintain the ceasefire agreement, not to break it. And here, Al Jazeera reporting Hamas offers all captives for permanent truce as Israel attacks go on. So again, the hope, this is today, February 19th. This is where we are right now. Israel has offered to release all of the hostages and to, accelerate the timeline for release. But Israel continues in violation of the ceasefire to kill Palestinians. Again, that's where I'm coming down with a hope maybe Trump sends Witkoff back over there to tell Israel, you got to take this deal and you got to stop the killing. We'll see. That would be nice. And so that hope is what keeps me from, rescinding my quote defense, unquote, of Trump by saying he's not a Nazi, but maybe he really is. And here you go. In the past 24 hours, this is from today's Al Jazeera. So Israel is violating the terms of the ceasefire. It has continued to violate the terms of the ceasefire. And here you have it, 3 more killed in the past 24 hours. 240-242-5646, 240-242-5646. I thought I heard a sound, but I guess not. I'm looking to see if we have the chat. Looks like we don't have anyone in the chat right now. Maybe Ari's there. Ari, my loyalist listener. He is awesome. It's great to see you there, Ari. Thank you so much for being with me. It's really, really meaningful. Israel's That's so weird. I thought I heard that sound. I don't know where that came from. Israel, one of the, I guess, defenses I've heard for Israel's using children as shields, Israel shooting children in the head, Israel's bombing hospitals, schools, residences. One of the defenses I've heard, by the way, I find it completely nauseating defenses. But one of the defenses I've heard is, well, war is hell. That's what happens. No, it doesn't have to happen that way. That it happens that way because that's what Israel wants. And but even if you try to say, well, all right, Israel's justifiably pissed off. They didn't like October 7th. Who would? So they're, they've amped things up a little bit. They've taken they kick things up a notch. They've taken it to the next level. No. Israel has a long history of shooting children in the head. This is from, and you can see I circled it, May 2021 to Children's Defense International. 14-year-old Palestinian boy, Muhammad, there you see Muhammad Khalif, he was shot in the head and killed. That's in 2021. So no blaming October 7 for that. That was May 2021, right? So, okay, well, some people might say, well, so one time. All right, every dog gets a bite. So the Israeli military sniper shot one 14-year-old in the head in 2021. Come on, let it go. Here's from UNICEF for every child. This is the previous year. December 2020, December 4, 2020. This is in the West Bank. That last killing in the head was, I believe, in Gaza. This is in the West Bank. December 4, 2020. A 15-year-old Palestinian boy was shot and killed today in the West Bank in Palestine. And in the past 2 weeks, so it wasn't just a one-off. In the past 2 weeks, 4 other Palestinian children were shot and severely injured in the West Bank. Those 4 children, 15 and 16-year-olds, injured in the chest, the eye, and the head. One child lost his eye. That's what Israel does. That's what our closest ally does. 240-242-5646. That 14-year-old boy said was Al Jazeera. It was in Hebron or Hebron. I believe Hebron is Gaza, but I want to just look that up. It may be West Bank, but just want to be sure about this. I'm wrong. Hebron is West Bank. So you have Israel shooting children in the West Bank repeatedly. And not just, if you're a Palestinian, you're at grave risk of death at the hands of the Israeli military. It's just that simple. If you're an Israeli child, if you're a Palestinian child, you're not safe. So going back a little further, December 25th, December 31st, last day of that year, 2015, was not a good day. Let's see, that's interesting because the date line that was retrieved was December 30th, 2015, but the killing was on February 19, 2008 in Khan Yunis. 10-year-old boy was killed. 2 others were wounded. Sniper shot a 10-year-old boy in the head. So this is what Israel does. And for those of you who want to justify, those who try to justify the past, 15, 16 months, whatever it is, adding it up, I don't know, what was it, the October 7, and then you add October's the 10th, so 16 months since October, basically 15 months of bloodshed, of just ongoing bloodletting by the Israeli military in Gaza. For those of you who excuse that or explain it by reference to October 7, you can also very easily, and I think more persuasively, justify October 7 by reference to the children that Israel has been killing deliberately, systematically for decades. All right. Want to join me? 240-242-5646. 242-5646. One of the basic presumptions of this program, and I think a lot of you, those who watch, obviously those who see, might disagree with this, might say that's not one of your presumptions, but it is. I know what my presumptions are. One of my basic presumptions of this program is that Republican rule is bad. Republican presidents have done great harm to our country, that we don't want Republicans in charge. That's one of the presumptions of this program. And the blame that, so we presume that. So then we say, well, what do we do? How do we stop that from happening? By the way, one way you can stop is you click subscribe. Don't forget to click like if you haven't done that yet, because I really want you to like my videos. And hey, even if you don't like it, go ahead and click like just to let me know you do. It'll really helps us cut through the algorithm. But one of the main points of this program is this guy is a bad guy. And the response to that question on Facebook was, yeah, he's really bad. This was from Shade. Because the question is, well, what is Trump, right? What is he exactly? And there's all these different attributes that are, that he meets, right? That define him. Egotistical, narcissistic, corrupt, arrogant, deluded, incompetent, untrustworthy, rude, racist, unpredictable, authoritarian. So yeah, I don't know. The racist, I guess. I mean, I think he, who knows, right? I mean, but I think everything else there is very fair and accurate. And my response was, yeah, you're right. He is. That's who he is. Just tell it. But doesn't that tell you just how bad the Dems are, that they couldn't beat him? Democrats couldn't beat this guy. So instead of, beating your head about, beating the drums for what a monster Trump is, how evil Trump is, how terrible Trump is, I think what we should be doing is figuring out, how do we beat Trump? What do we have to do? What needs to be done? The answer is we need an alternative. That's better. That's clearly better for poor, struggling, and working people. That's how you win. You don't win by rhetoric. You don't win. I mean, you win by delivering a better deal. You deliver a better life for the American people. And frankly, it shouldn't be that hard. I mean, just some of the more headlines just tell you just how ridiculous. So we have, this is from Al Jazeera. They're pretty trustworthy. They're about as good as it gets, I guess, when it comes to the accuracy of media. So 2 days ago, after we've had, what was it, 2 deadly crashes? There was certainly one in D.C. There was a crash in Toronto a couple of days ago. That wasn't deadly, but I thought there was one in L.A. too. Was there not a crash in L.A.? Maybe not. Hundreds of federal aviation workers are fired. So he's making all of us who fly less safe, and I'm flying on Friday, so I'm not thrilled about that, to be perfectly honest with you. But this is terrible policy. You should be able to beat that, right? You should be able to. And I know a lot of people don't. Yeah, look, there's live. 2 small planes collide midair. This is brand new news. I didn't even know this. Today, 2 people dead after midair collision of 2. So this is brand new news. I'm talking about Trump cutting the budget for the FAA, cutting staff, doing, a really bad thing there, cutting staff. And now it turns out that today, wow, I don't know if you knew about this. Let me just show you the headline here. This is from NBC News. I don't know if I'm going to go to the clip of it. You can find it yourself. But yeah, here, I'll transition over there. 2 people dead. This is breaking news from NBC. So, it shouldn't be that hard to beat this kind of incredibly bad policy that we're seeing. And yet the Democrats can't seem to do it. And the reason is because their policies have also been terrible, and they've deliberately given short shrift. They have engaged in wealth and income transfer up, just as the Republicans have. So until that changes, and I don't believe it can change with the Democrats in charge, only when we have a true opposition party. And when I say opposition, I don't mean like a duopoly opposition where you're basically just saying, well, we put us in charge, we're better than they are. I mean, put us in charge because we're going to seize wealth and power from the billionaires and return it to the people. We are for you. New York has a good policy here, New York City, and they've been trying to get it for quite some time. The Democratic governor, Hochul, stopped it dead in its tracks, but then she finally agreed to it. It's made life in New York City just a little bit better, in Manhattan a little bit better, a little less fewer cars, a little more money available, more foot traffic for restaurants. It's more pleasant to go outside in New York City now. Trump's like, no, we don't like it. Shouldn't be that hard to beat this guy. But you can only beat him if you have a vision for a better America. If you can make the case to the American public, yes, we will be better. We'll be better for you. I want to play this. I was listening to this on my way in. This is Chris Hedges, who I will get to see this weekend in Seattle. And he's interviewing a University of California, Irvine professor. And she talks about that ad. There's a lot in this, but I want to just play this. They're going to talk a little bit about that ad where Trump kind of mocked Kamala's virtue signaling and pro-trans nod back in 2021. And the video here, it's called Virtue Orders. Let me see if I can get this up for you.
And they were discussing the trans ad in the that played during the World Series. I mean, we watched it religiously because we're in Southern California, where Trump says Kamala is with they, them, Trump is for us or with us, and the Pod Save America guys asked Pluff, "Why didn't you respond? Why didn't you respond more forcefully?" You know what he said? He goes, well, we focus grouped and tested it, and that ad didn't move the needle. Like, they were in a box. They didn't go outside. They didn't talk to Americans. They didn't talk to people. They don't know people. We are more working people, blue-collar people. We are in the most class-segregated version of American society that has ever existed.
All right, I'm going to stop it right there. So she is saying the reason... I mean, I'm just rephrasing it for the purposes of responding to it. But the professor saying that, yeah, there was this very powerful ad. We know that it helped move the dial. It helped Trump win, where he played some clip of Kamala from like 21 saying that she supported reassignment treatment, sex reassignment treatment for inmates, federal prisons. And they talk about how expensive that would be, and then Trump's, the message is she's for they, them, Trump's for you. And it was very effective at. And the professor says that the reason the Pluff gave for not responding is that their their focus group didn't think it was a good ad, didn't really matter to them. And so that she's saying, hey, they're so isolated, they're so in their bubble, they don't even know what hurts them or helps them. That's probably true. I accept that story on its face. I accept that anecdote. But I don't think in the end that's the real reason they didn't respond. The actual reason they didn't respond, they don't have a response. What's your response? Your policies, the Democratic Party policies, have hurt poor, struggling, working people for 30 plus years. You signed NAFTA. You signed CAFTA. You bailed out the big banks. You proposed, I mean, it didn't happen, you proposed cuts to Medicare. I'm sorry, to Social Security. So it's not that you didn't think the ad hurt you, it's that you can't answer it. What the Republicans, I mean, you could say, well, the Republicans are just as bad, or they're even worse. They're even worse than we are. But the problem with that is, no one's going to be like, oh, well, good, you suck, but we're going to vote for you anyway because the other guy's worse. But also, there's a problem because Trump's serving up a scapegoat. He's saying, yeah, the Dems aren't for you, which most certainly is the case. They aren't. But not only that, look who they are for. Somebody who's really different, who's like a trans. They're taking money out of your pocket. They're wasting time, your kids' time at school to talk about pronouns or to pay for reassignment surgery in federal prisons, which, by the way, is like such a nothing. I mean, it really is a huge distraction. But the Democrats have no response because they haven't fought for working people. Their policies aren't better. Or maybe they're not quite as bad in some areas, but in others they are just as bad or worse. So I don't think the professor, when she says, Professor Liu says they didn't respond because they didn't think it would hurt them because they're in a bubble and the only thing they look at is a focus group. I think they didn't respond because they have no response.
Just in a box, looking at their numbers, looking at focus groups, looking at polls. I don't know who they were paying to do those polls, but they burned $1 billion on them. And they thought, well, if we counterpunch, it won't move the needle. That's how they were making their decisions. That's how empty their politics are. They are not committed to people of diverse genders or sexualities. They were not committed to articulating a universal program that would have guaranteed people's safety, people's health care. You could have punched back with, he's distracting you from the fact that he's with the fat cats.
See, that's where she's saying, hey, look, here were some responses that the Democrats could have given. Trump's with the fat cats. The problem is, okay, yes, but so are the Democrats. See, Trump was pretty smart. He didn't say, oh, they're with the billionaires, because he's with the billionaires. It's not untrue that the Democrats are also with the billionaires, but he's not going to make that argument because it doesn't distinguish him. It just makes him look like a phony, a hypocrite. Oh, you're attacking them you're saying it's bad to be with the billionaires, but you're a billionaire and you're with the billionaires. That's why for the Democrats to make that argument would look really bad because they have a guy at their convention who says, hey, I'm a real billionaire. Look at me. I'm the real billionaire. So they can't make that argument. But Trump can make the argument that they're for they, them, but I'm for you, because it is true that the Democrats have at least articulated this woke DEI philosophy, ideology, which the professor rightly points out is hollow. It's fake. They don't even care about those people, people who are sexually different or people who are of color. And guess what? People see through that too. They lost a lot of Latino votes, despite wrapping themselves in the mantle of the DEI party and the party that's for immigrants and the party that's for dreamers and all of that. It didn't even help them because immigrants know it's a load of crap.
500 things like he's with Elon or he's with Gates. People don't love billionaires.
Well, the thing is, who are you going to say he's with Gates? I thought Bill Gates he's a Democratic billionaire. So this is the problem. The professor sort of buying into the notion that better messaging could have won the election. And maybe, and a better candidate could have won. I don't fully reject that argument. But ultimately, the Democrats really couldn't have embraced a persuasive, powerful, populist message unless they acknowledged how over the past, since at least Bill Clinton, since before Bill Clinton, I think a majority of Democrats voted for the Reagan tax cuts for the billionaire class. They weren't even billionaires back then until those tax cuts went into effect. So even if the Democrats message better, that messaging must include an acknowledgement of past failures and a willingness, in fact, an eagerness, in fact, a commitment to changing course. And they're not ever going to do that because they're too well paid and are too optimistic about their own futures if they stay in the Democratic fold to ever leave it.
Don't love the rich. There's a grassroots populist anger against this. He's with Big Pharma. They're trying to make him out as like this people's hero now because the Democrats let him do that. They let the GOP do that. Look, what they could have said, he's with your landlord. Democrats are with us or whatever.
But no one would have. See, the problem is that wouldn't have persuaded people. All right. 240-242-5646. All that said, I thought that was a really good interview by Hedges with the professor. She had an awful lot of really smart things to say. Her critique of DEI, of the Democrats' embrace of DEI, was just totally spot on. She couldn't have been more correct. It's been a terrible problem. It's an anchor around the Democratic Party neck, although that said, probably they win some elections because of it. But ultimately, it holds the party back because when Trump says she's for they, them, he's lying when he says, I'm for you, Trump's for us. But it's not untrue that Kamala and the Democrats also aren't for poor, struggling, and working people. And they do make a big show of their virtue and their wokeness and and that does obviously put off people who are also suffering, who are economically losing ground, and losing ground is a direct result of Democratic Party politics. This is from Real News Network in Baltimore, and they really nail it. I'm just going to give you the email they sent me. I want to go through a couple of the comments because it's so much better. And if you get a chance to see that Hedges video with Professor Liu, check it out. Virtue Hoarders. Some of the points that are made are really, really good in there. And what the Real News Network does is what so many other people don't do. And we talked about the virtue signaling and the wokeness and why it's, and how it hurts. And in yesterday's program, I said, hey, JVP, I love Jewish Voice for Peace, but why ask what my pronouns are for a Zoom call? It makes no sense. It's only guaranteed to turn people off. So the Real News Network makes it very, very clear. The reason Democrats are losing ground isn't because of that. It isn't because of the woke stuff, although it certainly isn't helping. The reason they losing ground is because their policies are pro-wealthy, pro-rich. That's why when the professor says, say you're Trump's with a landlord, I'm with you, but no one's going to believe it because the Democrats are also with the landlords. And so the Real News Network does a deep dive into Baltimore, which is a very poor city. There's a tremendous amount of poverty. There's very high crime rates. It's a dangerous city. There's not enough jobs. There's certainly not enough affordable housing, despite it's a poor city and there isn't housing for poor people. And the Real News Network does a deep dive and points out that despite, it's an all Democratic run city, but they have all kind of corporate givebacks to luxury apartment builders. So people who build these, the the billionaires, the developers, the Trumps, the people who are like the Trumps of Baltimore, build these big condos, these 25-story luxury apartment buildings right on the Inner Harbor, which is very nice. It's where the baseball park is. There's the restaurants there. It's relatively safe, certainly for Baltimore. There's a little theater district. So they get all manner of tax breaks to build these $3,000-$4,000 a month condos, which if they were in Manhattan would be $6,000 or $8,000. Or, that they can sell for over $1 million because they have water views, or even more than that. Maybe in the $2 millions for some of them if they're 3-4 bedrooms. And your buyer is a partner at a big law firm in Baltimore or a banker. There's a lot of money in Maryland. So, yeah, the people who build those luxury apartments, which provide zero help to the poor, struggling, and working class people who make up the majority of Baltimoreans and those who live in the environs of the city, they're not getting any help at all. The city isn't in the business of building working class housing or middle class housing. It's in the business of building luxury housing, making it easier for developers to do that. And the Real News Network points out that one of the senators, the state senators, who is great, Jill, she ran for Congress there. I can't remember her name, Jill. This is terrible. But anyway, I know her too. She wanted an audit of the city's of tax breaks. She wanted the state to audit various tax breaks that were being given to developers and other job creators, in quotes. And this was stopped. It was bottled up in committee by Vanessa Atterbury, who was another Democrat from Howard County. She just bottled up in the House Ways and Means Committee, did not put it up for a vote, almost certainly at the behest of Democrat Party leaders. Vanessa Atterbury, notorious because she has been one of the strongest, staunchest supporters of legalized gambling, of not just legalized gambling, but handheld device gambling on sports and casino gambling in your own home. So she doesn't want the state, she doesn't want the city of Baltimore to try to figure out whether tax breaks for billionaires to build houses and to build apartments for super rich people. She doesn't want us to know whether that really does any good for the city of Baltimore or its people. No, we don't get to know that. But if you want to bet on the Ravens -7 while you're watching your game, you want to put $1,000 down and you can't afford to lose that $1,000, Vanessa's all good for that. That's fine. So that's the Democrat. Those are all Democratic Party. Those are all Democratic Party politicians, and they don't stand with real progressives. They don't stand with Jill Carter, the progressive there. It's absolute S show. That's who your Democratic Party is, and that's why it's long past time to move to a different, to an alternative, to the Greens or to some other group that is pro-working class. Yes, there are good Democrats. Jill Carter is a good Democrat, but she is basically just hamstrung. She's hamstrung by her own party. She can't do good. She doesn't have allies. She's neutered. While Democrats rail against Trump's overreach, they continue to ignore the deep economic injustices thriving. And in fact, they're not just ignoring them, they're causing them in the cities they govern. In Baltimore, our reporting is exposed, right? Like I just said, they give away their own citizens' tax money in breaks to developers to build luxury homes, which make it even harder for the people who live in the city. who aren't wealthy. In Baltimore, our reporting has exposed how so-called blue strongholds have become breeding grounds for inequality, where luxury developments get massive tax breaks while working class residents foot the bill. So again, exactly what I just said. Democratic Party politics, Democratic Party policies aren't just, benign. It's not just that they're not doing anything. They're actively harming working class people. So is it any surprise that they voted for Trump? Shouldn't be. It shouldn't shock you. It shouldn't surprise you. You shouldn't wring your hands or bemoan these ignoramuses. Instead, let's work together to build a party that is for working people, that is for struggling people. Because that's not where we are. All right, final comment, and then I'll call it a little bit shorter today than usual. It's not enough to oppose Trump. This is what I've been saying. It's not enough to oppose him from the national stage, like the way AOC does, or insult him or mock him like Jamie Raskin does. No, that's not going to work. Democrats have to prove they can actually deliver for working people at home. And how do you prove it? You do it. There's no excuses. If you want to argue, well, the problem is national politics. The problem is you have people like, even when Democrats have power, you have people like Manchin and Sinema gumming up the works. Why are Democrats letting them? They don't have to. There were a lot of ways that Obama could have gotten past, the Joe Lieberman situation. Don't let them filibuster. Reverse demand a change to that filibuster. Figure it out. Actively campaign against Joe Lieberman. Don't let him stop your health care bill from having a public option. And what he should have been doing is calling for a universal single payer. That should be a mantra of the Democratic Party. And Joe Lieberman didn't force Barack Obama to enter into job-destroying, community-destroying free trade deals. The Democratic Party has to prove it's the party of, by, and for working people. It has, in the past 30 plus years, nearly 40 years, proven just the opposite. And as long as that is the party it will not win elections. It will not, maybe a few Democrats will win, but the American people will lose. We have to move away from the Democratic Party. If you care about your country, if you love your country, then we've got to join together. We've got to unite. It's awfully late. All right, that'll do it for me. I'll be back tomorrow. I know a little bit of a shorter show. It took me some, sometimes the prep, I didn't have as much time as usual, but I'll be back tomorrow, Thursday. Enjoy the rest of your day.